evening, everyone. We are back, and we're talking about blunders in Budapest. The game I want to go over today is between the Uzbekistan team. They are actually the defending champions. They won the Olympiad 2 years ago in China. In India, not China. And they were actually able to come third in the one that was played this year in Budapest. That was pretty impressive for them, winning it 2 years ago and then at least coming third in the one that was played this year in Budapest. So this is still the first round of the Olympiad where we have the guy from Trinidad, Cabrallis, playing against Yakubboev, Nodiebek. This was a very interesting game, being that the GM took a lot of risk, and at some point in time, it was actually just losing this game. And I've mentioned this in the past. Sometimes you're playing a much stronger player, and they're just losing, but somehow you don't find a way to win that game. And that happens because, you really have to get used to being in that position against them to be able to make sure you score the point. It's so important, and that's why, when we compete on a regular basis, we're trying to put ourselves in a situation whereby we have positions like that, not just against any kind of player, against strong opponents, and then being able to win. Luckily for Yakubboev, he was able to escape this game against Cabrallis, Quinn from Trinidad. So let's get into the game and see what happened. This was actually the Rook G1 version of the Najdorf. E4 was played, C5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight to f6 is played, knight to c3. All these are your normal Sicilian, Najdorf moves. Now, in this position, there are several moves that's been played by white. We have the very ultra-sharp bishop to g5. We have the English attack, the bishop to e3. We're not playing that. We have the positional a4. We have the quiet bishop to e2. And we have the aggressive f4. And actually, we have even seen moves like h4 in this position. But in this game, we're going for the rook to g1. And of course, white's plan is very direct. I want to attack your king. So how are you going to go about that? I have no clue. So here, white plays rook to g1. And it's kind of interesting because I actually credit the FM from Trinidad, Cabrallis, Quinn, for such an aggressive approach against the GM. Caro told me this many years ago. He said the best way to beat a grandmaster is play main lines against them. Don't try to play sidelines and all that stuff. You're going to get crushed. So just play main lines. Whatever happens, happens. If you lose a game, go back and find out why you lost the game so that you want to come back strong. If you win a game, good luck to you. So rook g1 was played, b5. In this position, b5 was played. In the database that I checked, e5 is actually most of the most logical move, most played. I'm not going to say most logical, most played move. And this is the idea, based on the principles, because I have some principles that I use when playing games. Rook g1 pretty much is threatening a flank attack. The best way to make a flank attack is to hit at the center. So e5 makes a lot of sense for black here. But of course, b5 is also played. And the idea of b5 is to try to force the knight on c3 away, create some weakness on the e4 pawn. Bishop goes to b7, puts pressure on the pawn on e4. And it's going to make white very uncomfortable. So b5 is played, a4, a very interesting move by white. White says, okay, I'm going to play a4. If you want to move your pawn to b4, go ahead. I'm going to throw my knight to e4 and then try to arouse your position. So after the move a4, b4 is played, knight d5. White is playing very aggressively. And let's just check this position out. White has developed two of his pieces, 1, 2. The rook on g1 don't really count right now. Why? Because there are no open files for this rook to operate. For this rook to have anything doing, the pawn on g2 has to be taken off the board. But for right now, I'm not going to say the rook on g1 is a developed piece. No, it's not. It's not open file. But the two knights, the knight on d4 and e4, these are developed pieces. And these pieces can cause some mayhem for black if black is not careful. And the GM captures on e4. I think this is a little risky. Now, principle-wise, now, number one, you're behind in development. You have just a piece developed. Your opponent has two pieces. It doesn't just have two pieces. The other bishop's actually free to move. The queen is free to move. And, you don't just go grabbing pawns. But, he's a grandmaster. I mean, probably something is seen. And when I actually checked, it was actually one of the top moves played in this position. So knight takes e4, but definitely it comes at a risk. Bishop to c4. Now white has three pieces developed. It's important we keep an eye on this. White has three pieces developed. Even if it is theory, we still want to try to reason out the reason. We still want to reason out the moves we're making, why we're making those moves. So bishop to c4. White's pieces looks very active. He's trying to really make a lot of things happen. So we're going to see how this game continues. So e6, very important e6, because apart from the fact you hit the knight, it's important for you to get your bishop in the game so you can keep your king safe. The longer your king stays in the center of the board, the more problematic it might be for this king. After the move e6, queen e2. White is really throwing everything at black. What's the point of queen to e2? Now, you cannot take on d5 because after bishop captures, the queen pins the knight to the king, the bishop attacks the rook. So if the rook moves, there's bishop takes this, and this, you're going to get your piece back, and then the king is still stuck in the center. This is not going to look so good for the black pieces. So instead, knight f6 is played. Now, after a series of moves, black started making some not so good moves. But really, we really can't blame him for making those not so good moves. This is what I normally talk about. When you play in a game, and in the game you blundered, right? Like all of a sudden you make a very bad move. Guess what? Don't blame the blunder. Blame the move that led to the blunder. When this game started, like I said, even if it's a theoretical stuff, you want to play the theory the right way. Black is definitely underdeveloped. And white is trying to do as much as possible to try to punish black for keeping this king in the center for this long. So after the move knight to f6, bishop g5 makes a whole lot of sense. Let's break it out. White has developed all his minor pieces. Okay? So in one move he castles, and then he has another rook in the game. He has the queen in the game. This has to be good for white. This has to be good for white. But somehow the GM was able to escape. Somehow. So after the move bishop to g5, bishop to e7, it's very important for black to tuck in his king as quick as possible. Bishop to e7 is played. Knight takes e7. Queen takes e7. Now, white castles. Black needs like two moves. 1, 2, maybe 3 to get his king safe. Now, I'm really questioning the idea of this rook g1. Like, what exactly is this rook doing on g1? Not much. I would say nothing really. Although he had a plan of opening up with g5, but at the end of the day, the rook is really not doing anything. But now we have a position where black is just better. White is just better. Why? He has all these pieces in the game. He has the rook on the half open file. The queen is pretty active. And it's going to take a while for black to really try to see if he can equalize this position. So after the move, castles long, h6. I don't know. There definitely has to be a reason why castle short wasn't played here. And I think if he castles short, knight f5 might be really, really, annoying, because you cannot capture the knight because the queen is hanging on e7. And yes, that could be a very bad move. So h6 is played here. After the move h6, bishop to h4, rook to a7. Interesting. You still cannot castle here because of knight f5. So what's the point of rook f7? It might be threatening to castle. Why? Because knight f5 doesn't work, because I'm just going to take the knight and say thank you. If you take my queen on e7, that's why I have rook on a7, rook captures back. So the GM is really fighting to get back into the game. So f4 was played. I really like the spirit by which the white pieces is played. f4 is played here. Trying to gain as much space, trying to put pressure on this pawn at some point if possible. And of course, rook g1. Rook G8, E1 will be a good move. Just trying to push this pawn all the way and cause a lot of problems for the black pieces. And of course, castling to the king side doesn't look so good now, especially when black has created a hook on the h6 square. So, rook to c7, very important to move the rook to square where you can actually have something to do. Rook to c7 is played. Rook g to a1. I was just talking about that move. In chess, you're always told to centralize your pieces. Now we have to be careful because this move is very well. I don't think it's such a big deal yet because after take captures, I can't move the queen away because I can just bring my bishop to e6 and then cover up the queen, and then black is just good. So d5. There's this saying. I have a lot of sayings. You can't be making aggressive moves when you're behind, when you're worse. It's going to make your position get way worse. That means if you have an inferior position, it's one thing to make attacking defense, but when you start making an attacking move based on attack, because the d5 move is based on forcing this bishop back, there's a problem with that move because you're going to open up more opportunities for your opponent to try to exploit the fact your king is still on e8, and you have a lot of things to worry about. Like I said, g4, g5 is still very much in the air anytime the king castles. And d5, not so good move. What would have been a good move for black here? Now, since these pieces are kind of looking at you very angrily, especially the knight here, knight is in on e6, bishop, try to exchange, ease the pressure, knight c6, ease the pressure, it takes, rook takes, ease the pressure, now you can castle. Now you don't have to worry about the knight jump. Now anytime the pawn comes, you could always push the pawn. And then now you have to start thinking about your own counterattack. Don't say because I'm a grandmaster I can do whatever. If you do whatever is going to do you. So we have to be very careful. So in this position, d5 is played, and rightfully so. The idea of d5 is to try to soften the effect of the pressure on e6. What do I mean by that? The bishop is attacking e6, knight is attacking e6, queen is attacking e6, rook is attacking e6. How many do we have defending e6? We have the f7, we have the bishop on c8, and we have the queen on e7. Now there's a problem with this position. With your queen on e7, your king on e8, that does not look good. And another thing why knight c6 is such a logical move is, in a game of chess, you are always told to develop your pieces. Get your pieces on good squares. And now if you look at this position for black, black has two pieces that is yet to develop. And when I talk about two pieces, I'm talking about the minor pieces. We have the bishop on c8, we have the knight on b6, b8. Interestingly, the bishop keeps an eye on the a6 pawn and the e6 pawn. The knight keeps an eye on the a6 pawn, the bishop also keeps an eye. Probably the reason why knight 6 wasn't played was because black doesn't want to lose the pawn on a6. But I tell you, Mr. Black, this is the last thing you want to be worried about with your king on e8. So let's keep going. d5 is played. Bishop takes d5. You got to love the way the white is playing this game. Now, bishop takes d5 is just a beautiful move because this is the thing. You cannot capture the pawn because of the pin on the e file, and you cannot capture the knight because of the pin on the h4 e7. So, queen d6 is played. Now already black is just losing. There's been several bad moves, but a blunder came up later on in the game that was just totally lost for black, even though he's still losing right now. But there's a bigger blunder. And of course, why am I saying there's a bigger blunder? The series is about blunders in Budapest. So we're not just going to look for one small blunder. We want to go for a big blunder. Even though in this position, black is already in a lot of trouble, but we're still going for the very big blunder. So let's keep going. Bishop to g3. Now, the idea of this bishop is to try to keep an extra attack on this queen and the rook and all that. But sometimes you have to make sure that when you have an advantage, you use it immediately. If you don't, you're going to lose it. So what would have been a good move for for white in this position? Knight takes e6 is just crushing. Knight takes e6 is just crushing. But this is the idea. If knight takes e6, for example, if f takes e6, what does now? Because guess what? There's a rook putting pressure here. Now, if queen takes e6, and now this is when we step aside as a personal sacrifice, so that we can simply pick up this queen and pick up the game. But, at some point in time, when you're playing a strong player, you get very intimidated. And that's why I say, for you to win such games, you have to put yourself in that position on a constant basis. So let us go back to what happened in the game. Bishop g3 was played after queen d6. Now, it's very important to keep focused on the game. Very important. Keep focused on your advantage. Your advantage in this position, Mr. White, is not the extra attack. No. Your advantage lies in the fact that this king is stuck in the center, and you don't want to give this king a chance of running away. So your advantage right here is about the king in the center of the board, not the queen. Why am I saying this? This happens a lot to a lot of us. You have an advantage somewhere. Instead of you milking the advantage, you get distracted. And when you get distracted, things can go wrong very quickly. So knight e6 would have been a very, very good move for white. Even though black is still in trouble, not as much trouble as if the pawn had been taken by knight on e6. So knight takes bishop, knight pushes the pawn, queen moves to e7, bishop takes rook, knight takes rook. Now, all of a sudden, white is losing all the advantage he has. And you don't want to get yourself in such position against grandmasters. No. They would not let you get out of it. At some point in time, the FM had an advantage of +3. Right now, it's just 0.7. Not much. Something in GM can live with. So queen to c4. What's the point? Still putting pressure on e6. There's pressure on e6. There's a lot of pressure on e6. So what does black do? Black castles like, hey, I'm getting out of here. It's about time. But even after that casting, it's still a very good position for white. So f6 is played. Now, you cannot capture with the queen because you lose a piece. Right? Yes, you cannot capture because that was actually the best move for black. But there goes the blunder. Queen to d8. Blunders in Budapest. Queen to d8 was just a totally bad move. Now, this is the question. Didn't the GM see it? Of course it did. He felt probably this would have given him a better chance of saving the game. And the interesting thing is this GM escaped this game with a draw. He escaped it. It shouldn't be. When you do the wrong thing in the chess, you should get punished, regardless of who you are. But the thing is, we have to have the resources. We have to have the ability to punish such moves. So, takes on g7, rook to e8. You don't have the time to capture back. No. So rook to e8, takes on e6, creating an x-ray and discovered attack on the queen. You cannot take back because the queen is going to hang. So at this point, the GM thought, you know what, I might as well give up the queen and try to survive this position. King captures, knight captures. Still a totally lost position for black. But how do you make this work? How do you make this work? How does white? Now, this is one thing you have to do. Identify the advantage you have. What do you think is your advantage in this position, Mr. White? And then how do you milk it? Number one, I like queen here. What's the point? I'm trying to take on h6. It's going to be checkmate. Okay, I like queen there. And what else can I do here? Number one, these pieces are not so active. I don't know where else these pieces can be. And then, is it possible to create an extra a pass pawn on the queen side? Yes, we have a majority. We have a 3 against 2. But also, we have to be worried about a white king. So let's see how this game continues. Queen 8. I just said the point is to take the pawn, threatening checkmate on h8. It says h5. Say no. Move further down. Queen takes h5. Rook to d8 check. King to c1. Knight takes g7. Queen creates a double attack, pinning the knight, attacking the rook. Knight goes to c6, defending the rook, defending the pawn, and then after bishop e6, to me, look at this position, it's not so bad, but it's really bad, because once this pawn starts coming down, and this is the thing, anytime you're playing, you have a queen against the opponent that doesn't have a queen, maybe your opponent has some pieces for the queen, what you want to do is to attack the king. You have to. there is no kind of positional chess you want to play. You want to just come and attack this king, especially when the king doesn't have any coverage. There are no pawns to cover the king. So you want to try to just run your pawn all the way down to try and exploit the fact that this king is not covered. So let's keep going. Rook to e3, does it make sense? Yes, it does. What's the point? Pressure on the g file. Bishop to f5, rook to g3, bishop to g6, saying, you know what, I'm trying to cover for my king. h5, I talked about this. At some point in time, you're going to have to start moving those pawns. So after the move h5, after the move h4, h5 is played. Now the idea is of course, trying to run the pawns down, trying to make this king very uncomfortable. Rook attacks the queen. The queen goes to f6. What's the point of queen f6? Attacking the knight on c6. And then this is also attack. If I can take the knight or take the pawn, I can try to create a pass pawn on this part of the board. So after the queen to f6 and the rook goes to attack the queen goes back to g5. And I have to tell you this. At this point in time, I know very well that white to be like, you know what, I mean, against the 26, 67 or something like that, I'm sure white is feeling good, like already have a draw in hand. But you know, one thing is, yes, like I said earlier, you have to really put yourself in this position time and time again to be able to confidently decline a draw offer from a GM because you're just winning, just play the position. So rook attacks the queen again, queen comes back to f6, rook goes back, queen to h4. Now, after that move, the game should just be a draw because those are repetition of moves. And what happened afterwards, after queen to g5, I think after queen to g5, I think this is where, okay, so this is, yeah. After queen to g5, I think this game ended in a draw after queen to g5. Yes. So, and I think at some point in time, the white player felt, you know what, I don't want to push too hard. I have a draw in hand. I'm going to just take it. I think another possibility for white to do something is to try, even though you're trying to move this pawn, trying to find a way to join with the other pawn so that this king can be very, very uncomfortable. Anyway, that's it for now. And we're going to still come up with some of the games that were played at the Chess Olympiad, you know, all the blunders, the male section, the female section. This is still the first round. There's so many more rounds to go. And always thanks for being around. Check the game. Let's see what you think. And see you soon. Take care and God bless.